Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today's topics are feelings and flat affect. There's this whole thing with autism where you're not supposed to be able to show your emotions very well on your face, and you show a lot of naivete. And so I want to really dig into what that looks like from the inside and whether it really is naivete. I'm Leah Batlle-Rafferty, and this is Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. Okay, so let's start with the flat affect thing. I do not have a flat affect. It is not something that I personally have to deal with. I, in fact, go the other way. People say that I show all my emotions on my face, and I have learned over the years how to temper that a little bit, but still, it isn't perfect by any means. When I first started working, people would watch the expressions on my face and then ask me questions based on the angry or upset or frustrated expression that they saw. And it put me on the spot for things that maybe I didn't want to share with a larger group, but at the same time, I didn't know how to control it. Even now at this age, I tend to do pretty well with shielding most of it off, but I do have a tendency to smile at inappropriate times, probably a little sarcastically, or make faces when things are really, really annoying or poorly done. So I don't know that I ever will age out of it, but it is very, very different than having a flat affect. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that the flat affect is one symptom that some of us have, while other of us can go a completely different way. And this is about as much as I'm going to say on this topic because I'm not really sure how to elaborate on it anymore. I just wanted to make sure I touched on it. Negative emotions. Okay. So this is the doozy, right? This is the one that really causes me the most problems. The biggest issue I can see with the way I am is that I internalize negative emotions, and I have since I was very young. So while it's easy to express good emotions, negative emotions always get turned inwards. Kind of in the same way that a depression is focused inward on yourself, right? So if I'm depressed, I'm laying in bed, I'm feeling bad, I have no energy, etc. And yes, I do have depression now and then. Other negative emotions also dig their way inside of me in different ways. When I was younger, that translated to rocking. That translated to hitting my head with my hand or completely hiding from the situation so I didn't have to feel that emotion. Everything turned inwards, of course, becomes a source of pain, and you can't deal with it for a lot of the time. The other part of negative emotions is that you tend to dwell on things forever. So if I get someone upset and it upsets me, and now I've turned this emotion inwards and I've rocked and I finally kind of gotten over that whole thing, the next step is I analyze and analyze and analyze because my interaction with another person is masking, right? So I had to learn a way of interacting with them that was socially acceptable. And when I have these emotions, usually it means that the interaction went badly, and then it feels like I failed at masking. So then I spend days wondering what I could have done better. How could that interaction have gone better? What was it about the back and forth that messed me up? All of those things lead to negative emotions causing me a much bigger drain, I think, than most other people. I think this also goes along with the fact that adrenaline is not my thing. I am the exact opposite of an adrenaline junkie, and I don't know if that is part of, just me, if that's part of my way of being, right? So risk is this thing like I've talked about in episode 1. So does the fact that I worry about risk have to do with the fact that adrenaline makes me cry, basically? Reality. I cannot handle adrenaline. So do I avoid risk in order to avoid the adrenaline, which causes me so much emotional turmoil? Similarly, when you're angry, when you're like extremely frustrated, it feels to me like there's adrenaline. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you for sure, but it feels to me like, your heart rate picks up and there's adrenaline going. And unlike people for whom the adrenaline gives you this like positive high feeling or makes you feel more invulnerable and things like that, for me, the adrenaline causes this painful crash. It causes me to want to curl up, and it causes me all of these other side effects that I want to avoid. So I'm not saying this is the whole reason. I'm just saying that I wonder sometimes if that adrenaline reaction is part of what the avoidance is. So the emotions turning inwards, the adrenaline, all of it comes together to make me want to curl up in a ball. I can work through this. I have worked through this. In fact, in one particular instance in college, there was this person in the fraternity next door who was certified for rappelling, and I was terrified of heights. And one thing you have to understand about the way I work is I do not normally have negative reactions to low risk. What does that mean? So, if there's a thing, let's say a shark attack, because they're rare and most people haven't dealt with it. But let's say there's a shark attack in South Carolina. I can assure you that it will not prevent me from going to the beach anywhere, because the odds, the numbers are what matters. And by the same token, it took me forever to learn to drive because the numbers, when it comes to driving, it's really, really dangerous. So I had to work myself to taking the risk to learning to drive. So bringing back that to fear of heights is irrational. I know why I have it. When I was little, something happened, and I can talk about it a little bit more in the Patreon. But I have, it was worse before, but I still have it a little bit, an irrational fear of heights. And of course, a fear of falling, which I think is a little bit more rational. So this friend sets up this rappelling off of the roof of our building, which was about 5 stories up. And I know he's a good instructor. So knowing that my risk is low, I go up there and shakily come to the edge of the building. And I'm crying. I'm crying the entire time. I'm crying as he loops the thing on me. And he's like, of course, very worried. And I'm like, no. I have to do this, right? Because I understand that desensitizing a fear like that means that I have to do activities that I might avoid. So this seems safe enough. I know that the odds are great if you have a good rappelling instructor who knows how to set everything up. And so I go down the side of the building and I'm bawling. Everyone else gets off and they're like, ooh, this is great, whatever. And I'm crying in a corner. That's just as an example of negative emotions, how adrenaline feeds into it, and how it takes me forever to recover. So now that I'm 50 versus when I was in my 20s, what does this look like? What does the negative emotion thing look like? I still tend to try to stay away from negative emotions, but I'm better about handling them when they happen. When I was in my 20s, I could spiral really, really badly on having talked to somebody, seeing that they're mad and trying to figure out what they were mad about. And maybe, I read the fact that they're mad on their faces. They're not acting mad at me, but clearly they're covering it up. So was it at me? I don't know. This kind of thing. This was my constant struggle. And it took up a lot of energy, and it still does when I spiral that way. So yes, I still stay away, but now I don't tend to sit on it the same way I did. And I understand a little bit more about the fact that it wasn't aimed at me, or that there's ways to ask that won't turn into yet another emotional confrontation. I also, through particular things that I don't think I should share on here because I'm trying to make this kind of more friendly and a little bit easier for families to listen to, but I will talk about a little bit on my Patreon. I went through experiences that eventually backed me up against a wall, and I had to decide whether I could keep internalizing the emotions or whether I could finally focus them in the right place. So instead of internalizing the emotions, especially anger, I learned, at least to some point, how to actually be angry at someone else and understand that they were the ones that caused my anger. And I know that there is, a lot of psychology out there where it's like the only thing you can control is yourself. And so you shouldn't react with anger, etc. But the truth is, when you are a person who causes harm to yourself, whether emotionally or physically, because of negative emotions that you're feeling and that they're turned inwards towards you, even when you weren't the cause of the harm, learning how to externalize it is actually a huge step. It's actually beneficial. I don't know that a psychologist would tell you that. I am not someone who can diagnose this, but I can tell you that it really helped me a lot. Finally, let's talk about good emotions. Good emotions are all you normally see with me. So I laugh a lot, I smile a lot, I talk earnestly a lot, I talk seriously a lot, though that's probably the most negative you're going to see me. At work, people comment about how pleasant I am or how much I laugh. There are obviously the reasons I talked about with the negative emotions, but I think it's more than that. I think sometimes I worry that my emotions are flatter than other people's. And of course, I don't know that. I don't know what's in your head. I don't know what's in anybody else's head. All I know is what's in my head. So based on what I see, sometimes I worry that my emotions are flatter and other people's are multi-layered. So I have a very straightforward happy, maybe, or a very straightforward amused, or a very straightforward etc. And other people have things like they're amused and frustrated and understanding some weird complexities that I don't. I don't know how to explain it because I don't have it. But I look at people and I see complexity that I don't think I feel. I also tend to laugh in places that other people don't find amusement. So that's something that I had to learn how to deal with. My sense of humor is very different, I guess, than other people's, or I laugh when surprised. When I say that my feelings are flat, that doesn't mean that I can't be sarcastic. I am sarcastic a lot. It doesn't mean that I can't have a rich emotion. It more means like the layers underneath it aren't as complicated as other people's. And I think that comes across as naivete, right? Like if you can't feel negative emotions and you can't point them at other people, if you do feel them, then maybe you always see the best in people, though I don't know that I'd say that about myself anymore, but maybe back in the day, I would say that about myself. I always used to take people at face value, which I learned through masking and everything, that's not the case. Other people wear social masks all the time. Other people hide behind things all the time, and it's really difficult to figure it out. I worry that my feeling for other people is not as rich as their feelings for me. I worry that my way of expressing myself doesn't match society's way of expressing themselves, and so I look like I'm not as invested in something as I could be. I worry a lot about whether the me that I am is something that could be fully accepted by anyone who is neurotypical because of the way my emotions work. I think it was harder, once again, when I was younger, and I cared more because I needed to fit in, because I needed to get a job, because I needed to find success, because I needed to fit into society, and that's me. Once again, there are many people out there who have many different ways that this diagnosis affects them, and some of them can handle being brave and angry. Some of them can handle people's criticisms or don't see people's criticisms. And I am not like that. So good emotions, like I said, I feel like they're flatter, and sometimes that leads to its own version of anxiety. I put together the podcast with the idea of creating a real space, talking to you about real vulnerable things. And this one is hard. This one is so personal that I don't even know how to relay it correctly. But that was my attempt. If you feel these things, if you feel this way, if you feel like somehow your emotions are out of sync with other people's, or if you feel like, why can't I be brave? Why can't I be one of those people who stand up to other people or go head to head with somebody in emotional situations and come out of it, with energy, or feeling like I succeeded in doing something really important? Know that you're not alone. Know that this is really, really, really hard. We're going to talk about situations where this has been something I've had to work through in order to help my children, in order to help me, in order to help other people. But it's never easy. People talk about connection and connection to other people and how it should be a no judgment zone, right? I don't know about unconditional, but at least no judgment and all of these other things. I have no idea if the me that's inside is something that would ever be fully accepted. And I struggle with that regularly. The one person who fully accepted me is gone from the world. And I don't think anyone else knows me to the extent that that person did. So, feelings and how they isolate us and how they make us different is very, very, very hard to talk about. But I'm hoping that by bringing this up, those of you who also feel this way understand that it's not just you. And once again, there is nothing wrong with you, right? The struggles are how to fit into society, being who we are, not with who we are being wrong. Thank you for tuning in to Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. This podcast was written, edited, and produced by me, Leah Batlle-Rafferty. All music is by Carlos Neda, and this podcast is part of Labrat Solutions, Inc.